This is the first installment of mapping PDF documents to Iris. This video will be a general overview on how to map plain text fields to Iris. There will be other subsequent videos that will talk about in more detail how to do other types of fields. But for now, let's start off with a simple example and go from there. So here I have a short form PDF from one of our banks. It's called Humboldt Merchant Services. And you can see here that these are the fields that we want to map to Iris so that Iris can produce this PDF filled out with all the information that we obtain from our merchants through Iris. So the first thing you want to do is you want to crack open the PDF to expose all the field names that the bank had given each of the fields. And you'll see here that it automatically created these text box fields for most of the blank spaces, which is great. And you'll see here for signature, there isn't a field because obviously you need a signature. So what we want to do is we want to name these fields appropriately and then match those field names to the corresponding fields within Iris so that it can populate them properly. So let's just start and you can kind of see how it all unfolds. So what I've done is I took all the fields that are currently in Iris and then I created form field map names for each and every single one of them. The reason why we did this is because Iris has the ability to recognize and memorize field names within the PDF, and it automatically will match it to the corresponding field within Iris. Why this is important is if you're mapping multiple PDFs to Iris, by naming all the fields in the PDF the same for across all different merchant account paperwork, it'll allow you to use the same mapping within Iris to populate those fields. And you'll see exactly what I mean in a little bit. So let's go back to this PDF form. And what we're going to do is we're going to double click to expose the name of the form, and then we're going to go back to my little cheat sheet of the mapping within Iris, and I'm going to look for legal business name, that's the name of the field in Iris. This is a legal business name, and I'm going to change it to what I have in that spreadsheet, and I'm going to do the same for DBA. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy and paste the DBA into here. And then for principal name, now this is a little bit tricky because principal name within Iris, if you go to the principal section, we have it broken down by first and last name. Whereas in the PDF, it's only one field. Well, that's really easy. You just have to make two fields. So what we're going to do is I'm going to shrink this down, copy and paste this field and paste it here. Now, if you also want to, you can also create a text box field on your own and put it there. But in this particular case, I think it's easier to just copy and paste it. But if you wanted to do it from scratch, you could do it from scratch that way too. So all we're going to do here is we're going to go back to my cheat sheet mapping sheet, and we're going to scroll all the way down to principles, the corresponding tabs within Iris. So all these gray title names, that's the tabs. That's the names of the tabs within Iris. So principles, you'll see there's one for principles. You'll see site survey. There's one for site survey here. So these are all the fields within Iris, and these are the naming conventions that we're going to use to map it within the PDF. So here's the principal's first name. And go back to the PDF, copy principal, and then we're going to take the principal's last name, place it here, copy and paste, easy peasy. Now, since we have to do the same thing for the second principal, what we're going to do is we're just going to delete this field. We're going to copy and paste these two fields and move it down here. And since it's the second principal, and essentially in Iris, it's in our mapping, it's pretty much the same, except all we're going to do is change this number from 1 to a 2, principal 2, to distinguish it from principal 1, right? So we're going to change that to a 2 and change that to a 2. Done. And from there, we're just going to leave these signature fields blank because obviously we don't need any information to populate there. That's where the signature of the merchant is. He's going to wet sign it there, so we don't really need anything. And he's going to wet sign the date. Most banks require wet signatures, so it is what it is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and save this document. And now we're going to go into Iris, and we're going to map all those fields that we have named in the PDF to Iris itself. And how we do that is when you have the administration role, you'll have access to the administration tab. So you'll go under Manage and Administration, click on Administration. You'll go to e-signature, and then you will go to import PDF. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that PDF that we mapped with our naming conventions, and we're going to import that into Iris. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click on Add New Applications. Now, if you click on categories, these are the names of the banks and processors that are already within Iris. Since this is a Humboldt Merchant Services form, we're going to click on Humboldt Merchant Services, and we're going to click on Generic Form. We currently have the e-signature application ability in place. However, 99% of the banks out there do not accept digital signatures yet. So this functionality is pretty much useless to us at this point. So generic form is what you would fill out. And then here you would basically name the title of the form. In this particular case, it's a Humboldt Merchant Services ERA Innovio form. And what you would do is you would copy that down to the document name. Now for labels, it doesn't really matter what you put in as a label. It's not going to make any changes to the document or affect the document in any way within Iris. It's just merely a label. And these are labels that are already pre-entered in by Iris for very common forms and applications that most banks produce. In this particular case, we could just say default. We'll leave it as default, and then we will go ahead and upload our file. Okay, and then we will save it. Now, once we've done that, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see that this is the form that we produced, and it is mapped within the PDF, but we have not yet mapped it to Iris. The great thing here is you can actually drag and drop it wherever you want within this long list of items. Generally, what I like to do is I like to drag and drop it to the appropriate bank, that grouping of banks. So in this particular case, it's Humboldt Merchant Services, and I'm going to pull it all the way to the top, and I'm going to place it right here under Humboldt Merchant Services. Okay, because these are all the Humboldt apps. So it's a good thing to do, good practice. Now, there are two ways to map fields within Iris to the PDF. There's, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example of how to do it manually, and then I will show you how to do it automatically. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do now is we're going to go, now that we've uploaded the application or form to Iris, we're going to go back to administration. We're going to go back to e-signature. We're going to go to PDF mappings. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look for that PDF that we had uploaded to Iris, and here it is. And once you click it, you'll see that none of the fields within the PDF have been mapped to Iris yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you as an example a couple of fields that will just go as an example of how to map it to Iris. So what you're going to do here is you're going to click on select the field, and let's start off with the DBA name first. We'll add that. And what Iris automatically does is it intuitively tries to find the field that's the most similar to the one that you're trying to map. In this particular case, the algorithm did a really good job and actually found the field that within Iris that I'm looking to map it towards. And if you don't really know which field in Iris it is, you can always go back to this app mapping form, where you can see that here is the name that we had given the PDF for the DBA name, and this is the business under the business info tab, the DBA name, that's the name of the field within Iris. So business info tab, name of the field. So this is the field that is that we want to map it to Iris. And let's do another one. Legal business name, we'll add it. And then you see under legal business name, it did a pretty good job of finding the field that we wanted. So, and to make sure that that's the field, we'll go to business info tab, legal business name. That's what it's named in Iris. And we'll go back here and we'll see business info tab, legal business name, and we'll save it. And just like that, this application, these fields have now been mapped to Iris, and this is how you do it manually. Now, let me show you how you can do this with pre-mapped applications. So you would go to Manage Administration, you would go to e-signature, and you would go to Import PDFs. Now let's scroll down to our form here that we were in the middle of mapping. It's right here. Now, if you actually click on this button, the Mappings button, this will show you every single application that has already been mapped within Iris, okay? And so what you can actually do is you can actually take the mapping of another application, and why I chose the MPA of a bank is because the merchant application form asks 100 different types of, over 100, you can see 188 questions. And since this little form is only asking for a few questions, my logic is, of all those 188 questions that this MPA is asking, I'm pretty darn sure that this little form is asking very similar questions, like legal business name, does business as, the DBA. Those are very common amongst the MPA. So if I actually copy the mapping of the MPA, it's actually going to take all those previously mapped fields and match it up to the PDF. And because we're using the same naming convention across all of these applications, you'll see that you don't have to do a whole lot to properly map these fields. So let's actually test it out and see if the mapping worked. So I have a test lead within Iris that I use for all of my my Q&A of all the documents and PDFs that I've mapped to Iris. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and see if it mapped properly. So I'm going to scroll down to the attachments. I'm going to open up that PDF, the new one that we entered in, HBMS ERA Innovio. I'm going to generate it, and I'm going to take a look to see if it mapped properly. So let's scroll down to the bottom. Now here's the legal business name. It's TestBiz AAS. Let's go to the business info tab and let's check the legal business name, TestBiz AAS. So that mapped properly. DBA is TestBiz 1235555. Legal business DBA right there, TestBiz, that's how it was mapped. The principal name of the first principal is Brad Eels. I'm going to go under the principal. The first principal is Brad Eels. The second principal is J.W. Epley. We're going to scroll down to the second principal, J.W. Epley. So just like that, we can see that the mapping is correct. So there's nothing that we have to change, and we can now let the salespeople know that this form has been properly mapped to Iris and that they are free to use it. Okay, so that will be the end of this introduction. In the next videos, I'll go into specifics on how to map different types of fields, checkboxes and drop-down menus and radio buttons. We're going to go over quite a lot, but this is just the introduction. Thank you.